Hello, this is Jared Morris with Settled Christianity, coming back at you today with exploring the minor prophets with Hosea chapter 2. So last time we talked, we looked at kind of the introduction to Hosea and laying the groundwork of this prophet who is called to go marry Gomer, who ends up being essentially a prostitute. It says that married a wife of whoredoms. And has children seemingly with other individuals that Hosea takes care of. And all of this is a picture of what Israel is doing to God by essentially being unfaithful to him, by running around with other religions and other beliefs of other nations, pagan nations that surround them. So let's just dive right into chapter 2. I'll read the whole chapter and then kind of break it down verse by verse, okay? So Hosea chapter 2, starting the first verse, it says, "Say ye unto your brethren Ami, and to your sisters Hama, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not your wife, neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredoms out of her sight, and her adulteries from between her breasts. Lest I strip her naked, and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. And I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For their mother hath played the harlot, she that conceived them hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, mine oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall, that she shall not find her paths. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but shall not find them. And then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband. For then it was better with me than now. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Therefore will I return and take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, and I will recover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereof she hath said, These are my reward that my lovers have given me, and I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, wherein she burned incense to them, and decked herself with earrings and her jewels, and she went after her lovers, and forgat me, saith the Lord. Therefore, behold, I will lure her, and will bring her into the wilderness, and speak comfortably unto her. I will give her her vineyards from thence, and the valley of Achor for the door of hope, as she shall sing there, as in the days of her youth, and as in the days when she came up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be at that day, saith the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and shall no more call me Bali. For I will take away the names of Balaam out of her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. And in that day will I make a covenant with them from the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of the heaven, and with the creeping things of the earth, or the ground. And I will break the bow and the sword and battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness, and in judgment, and in loving kindness, and in mercies. I will betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth, and the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine, and the oil, and they shall hear Jezreel. And I will sow unto her in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which are not my people, Thou art my people, and they shall say, Thou art our God. All right, so a little bit longer than the first chapter, but right off, kind of just going back to the beginning and kind of working through it. A lot of this is talking about the coming judgment of Israel, but also, it is demonstrating both in the life of Hosea in his personal relationship. It's an illustration of God and Israel. So in this way, he talks about that he will bring her to a place of nothingness. He says that, let's see, so he talks about the first two verses talking about, like, go tell your children, plead with their mother, tell her to, like, remove this sin out of her life. It says, lest I strip her naked, and set her as in the day that she was born, and make her as a wilderness, and set her like a dry land, and slay her with thirst. And what this is talking about is that essentially God will pull back the mercy that he has shown Israel, but he will pull back the mercy that Gomer has had in her life, and they will be dealing with the lack thereof. They will be missing out on the blessings of God. And this harkens back, I think, you think of Job, where he says, I came into the world with nothing. I will, came into the world with not one item, with no riches, with no fame. And he said, I'll leave the world as such, essentially. And in a similar fashion, this is the state of all of us. And this is what I want to say is that there's some people I know that could look at this passage and look at passages like this, passages of judgment, and say, like, it's so cruel for God to do this. But what I really want to highlight is that this is not like this is not to say that God is like stealing something that is rightfully these people's. No, the point is that he is just, these are the items of God as laid out later. These are the mercies of God, and he is just pulling back to show them truly their own state, their state of lack before God. And it says, I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. For the mother had played the harlot, she had conceived them, hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water and my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. I'll talk here real quick about this. The fourth verse, I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. Really, what it's talking about here is that first off, we got to ask, how is this applying to Hosea personal situation? And one, I don't think this says that, it's not to say that judgment, if we're talking about Hosea, I don't think this means that judgment will be poured out on the children. In fact, if you go back, like I said, if you go back to the first verse of this chapter, you'll find that it is God talking to the children. He's pleading with the children to plead with their mother. And really, it does demonstrate that there is an involvement in the life of the children. If anything, I'll say that if this applies to Hosea, there comes a point where the faithfulness of family members can no longer protect a lost individual. And this is what I want to think is that that basically, in my mind, I think it's kind of talking about that in Hosea's situation, that perhaps the faithfulness of Hosea and the faithfulness of the children have in some ways protected their mother. And now basically it's come a point where this is no longer going to be the case. And I think many people know this type of situation where they see these situations where maybe the faithfulness of one individual has protected other individuals from kind of the outcomes of their own choices, the outcomes of their own decisions. And there comes a point where that can no longer be. There comes a point where God will bring judgment and God will bring chastisement, and the faith of others can no longer protect that individual. But I also want to talk about on the big picture that I think this is more directed at Israel, that basically Israel as a nation is being judged, and the people of Israel, the quote unquote children of Israel, are going to suffer, and this is that in a way, by the whole nation gets, the nation does get judged, the nation does get punished, and the nation is made up of individuals who do suffer the repercussions of the nation as a whole. And this includes not only the unfaithful, it is due to the unfaithful, but also many times includes the faithful. We think of Jeremiah, who saw the destruction of Israel in his day, and was faithful and loved the Lord, and saw so much suffering and punishment and wrath of God because of the unfaithful Israelites. So I think this is a lot of what it's talking about. I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredoms. Is that essentially Israel is now filled with quote unquote children of whoredoms. She has filled her nation with people who have ran off with pagan worship, and in this way, that they've all become children of the unfaithful. But let's go down here. I think this is such a powerful section. It says, "For the mother hath played the harlot; she has conceived them, hath done. For she that conceived them hath done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers. I will give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns and make a wall that she shall not find her path. She shall." And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but I shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. I think this is probably another very famous passage from Hosea. This idea of a wall of thorns. There's many churches I've heard this prayed. I've prayed this in my life, that a wall of thorns might be placed around people who are running away from God, who has abandoned God. And in similar, it reminds me of the passage in 1 Corinthians where it talks about the man living in wicked sin, that's just open sexual sin. It says that turn him over, that his body might be destroyed, that Satan might destroy his body, that his soul might be saved. That basically, not just that he might be destroyed and that's it, but that he might return to God. And in a similar fashion, this is kind of what he's talking about Israel, is that I'm going to make pursuing sin and pursuing your own lusts so unpleasant and so unprofitable that you will feel like you have no other option but to return to the path of holiness. And once again, this is, once we have the big picture, once we understand just the dire wickedness of sin, and once we understand the beauty of holiness and beauty of serving God, we should want this in our own lives. We should want the paths of sin to be so wretched, like walking through just a path of thorns, just so unpleasant and so unprofitable. And this idea that you'll pursue your lovers, but you will not overtake them. She shall seek them, but she will not find them. And it's just this idea that I want you to not only go through that path of thorns, this path of suffering and unpleasantness, but when it's over, I want there to be nothing at the end. I want you to get to the other side of the thorns, all this unpleasantness, to find that there's nothing there, that sin has nothing to offer us. And that you'll be kind of forced to return. That there's people in my life that I'm praying right now, that I pray that when they pursue that sin and when they pursue that stuff that is separating them from God, that it is miserable. I hope that they see the absolute vanity of sin so quickly, and the misery that sin brings into their life so quickly, that they have no other option but to turn back to God. I think we pray this, not condescendingly, but in a loving way, and pray this in a form of weeping, that we don't want them to have to go through the thorns, but sometimes that's the only option that's left. That's the only prayer that we have left to pray, essentially. But it goes on, and this is also such a powerful thing. It says, this verse 8, for she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. Reminds me of Jesus, when they challenged him and said, do we pay taxes? And he says, whose inscription is on it? They say Caesar's. And he says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. It's this picture of like, God controls and owns everything. Even then, like, God controls the money, God controls the resources. Everything comes from God and returns to God. Even that with the inscription, God controls everything. He doesn't need the resources. And so like here, what it makes me think of is that we don't realize, essentially in this case, that they're living off the resources of wickedness and of sin, the resources of Baal. And he says they did not realize it was I who gave them the resources. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying, is that, the judgment is just God rolling back the mercy. He says that it was in my mercy that you had those resources. Like the New Testament says that it rains from the just and unjust. And sometimes many people use that in a negative sense, but in an agricultural society, rain was needed for the crops. And so he's saying, I do good unto the good, like the saved and the righteous, and also I do good unto the unrighteous as well. It is this general grace, this general goodness that God has given all of humanity. And he says that in a way he's pulling that back a little bit, just so you can see just that you literally have nothing. If God gives you nothing, you will have nothing. And that's what he's saying here. He says that I will take back all of this. Um, you know, and it goes down verse 9. Therefore, while I return and take away my coin in the time thereof, and my wine in the season thereof, I will cover my wool and my flax given to cover her nakedness. And now will I discover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and none shall deliver her out of mine hand. This idea that I'm gonna just take back everything, and you're gonna be left standing just out there very plainly in your sin. And you know when and then it's just this powerful statement that if God takes back everything that He has given us, all that we will have is just standing in our sin. This applies for Gomer, that as he pulls back these resources, she'll be left with nothing. And it was true for Israel, that as he pulls back those mercies, that all they are left with is their sin. And it will be true for our lives too, is that if God took back everything that He gave us, all we would be left with would be our sin. That's all that's all we stand before God with. We don't have resources. We don't have, everything that we have comes from God. So it goes down and says, I will cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, whereof she hath said, these are my rewards that my lovers have given me. I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. I will visit upon her the days of Balaam, wherein she burned incense to them, and she decked herself with her earrings and her jewels, and went after her lovers, and forgat me, saith the Lord. So once again, just this continued idea that God is rolling back His mercy. He is taking back the things that He has given her, just showing her just the absolute desolate state that Gomer, that Israel, that we would be in without God's mercy. So it goes down in 14. Therefore, behold, I will lure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. I will give her her vineyards from thence, and the valley of Achor for a door of hope. And she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, and as in the days that she came up out of the land of Egypt. Shall be that day, saith the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and shall call me no more Bali. For I will take away the names of Balaam out of her mouth, and they shall no more be remembered by their name. I'll pause here. So this is the turn, right? This is the beauty of so many of the minor prophets, is that God has laid out the judgment, the coming judgment that he's going to pour out on the people, pictured in the life of Hosea. And the end goal is not total destruction. It is not just wrath for the sake of wrath. It is wrath and judgment and chastisement for the sake of restoration and for the sake of renewal. And this is kind of what he's saying, is that I will bring her into the wilderness, into a place of nothingness, and I'll speak comfortably to her, and I'll give her her vineyards from thence, and the valley of Achor for a door of hope. I will give her back these things that she needs, the vineyard, these beautiful areas, the valley of Achor, which is named in the book of Joshua, basically, the idea that I've read from this area is that it's this idea of restoring a place that used to be beautiful and is no more. And he goes down in 16, he says, I shall be at that day, saith the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and shall no more call me Bali. And the word there, Ishi, means husband, and Bali means master. And it's kind of a play, if you see in the next verse, where I will take away the names of Balaam out of her mouth. So Balaam is the pagan god that Israel has turned to and has fled to over and over and over. And so it's working both ways. God says that you're going to so completely forget about Balaam that you're going to no more use the word Bali, which is just one word removed. It just means master, essentially. And then that's it, is that Balaam is going to be so out of your minds that even this word Bali, which is like a derivative of that name, it's not going to be used anymore. But he replaces it not with another word meaning master, but he replaces it with the word Ishi, which means husband. And this is it, is that just as in Hosea and Gomer, the point of the point of the wall, the hedge of thorns, the idea of pulling back this mercy, of this chastisement, of this misery that they have to go through, the point at the end is to restore the relationship. And that is true with God and Israel as well. He says that I will do these things so that you might call me husband, that you can return to this relationship that we had. And you don't call me just master, but you call me husband, that you recognize this relationship. I give you these things because I love you and that we have an active relationship. And it goes down, in that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven and with the creeping things of the ground. I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness and in judgment and in loving kindness and in mercies. I will betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord. So he's talking about this, so beginning half of this chapter is about the judgment, the suffering that has to go on. But the second half is talking about the restored relationship. He says, look, our relationship will be one of righteousness and in judgment and in loving kindness, in mercies and in faithfulness. He says that we're going to be built on good things, on righteous things, that is going to be on the basis of God's character himself. And it's talking about calling Israel back to a spiritual relationship with God. And we see this in our own spiritual lives, that God is calling us out of the world, out of wickedness, out of idolatry, into a daily walking with him, a daily spiritual relationship with God, built on righteousness, built on justice, built on judgment, built on loving kindness, on mercies, on faithfulness. That is what our faith and what our relationship with God is built on. And it says, and it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord, I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth, and the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine, and the oil, and they shall hear Jezreel. And I will sow unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, thou art my people, and they shall say, thou art my God. And so here we close it out that it's this beautiful picture. He describes this spiritual relationship pictured in the life of Hosea and Gomer, this idea that Hosea and Gomer's relationship will be restored, and they will be back in this loving marriage again, built not on sin, not on deceit, but built on righteousness and love of one another. And then he pictures God's relationship with Israel, that we will, once again, God says, me and you, Israel, we will be in love again, and it'll be built not on paganism or idolatry. It'll be built on love and faithfulness one to another. But then at the very end of this chapter, he kind of turns and he expands it outward, and he says that this relationship between us, it's going to grow, and it will encompass not just Israel, he says, but it will encompass people who are not my people. And this is quoted in 1 Peter chapter 2. It's talking about the Gentiles. It says that you're a chosen generation, a holy priesthood, and he says that thou, I said to them which were not my people, thou art my people. He says, you who were not a people are now the people of God. He says that we will, so he says that this is kind of the picture that God has and is laying out in the prophets and throughout the Bible, which is that a relationship, a spiritual relationship between him and his people, built not on fear necessarily, not on force or power, but built on love and righteousness, a desire to actually serve God. And he says that with that, it's going to expand and include the Gentiles eventually. And all of this is pointing to Christ. All of this is pointing to that one day, through the death of Christ, all the Gentiles are going to be brought in as well. And that salvation will be not just for the people of Israel, as it never was just for the people of Israel, but that the cross will kind of flatten everything out, and all people will be able to be brought into that relationship with God. And I think this is a beautiful picture of, with Hosea and Gomer, but also a beautiful picture of God and Israel, and a beautiful picture of us as Gentiles who are now brought into a relationship with God. And I think that we could be challenged by this to keep this relationship one of righteousness and of love, and to pray for others and for ourselves as well, that sin might have that hedge of thorns that keep our focus on God, to always remember that every good thing in my life, every single good thing, comes from God and God alone, that I have I have nothing to offer to God. It is only God giving to me. All right, so we're going to finish up right there. And like I said, we'll be back soon with Hosea chapter 3. Thank you.